Most men think the way to make a woman interested in them is to give her more attention, more compliments, more texts, more reassurance, more proof that they like her. And then they wonder why she starts pulling away, because there is a strange psychological principle at work here. The more desperately you try to convince someone that you want them, the more you communicate that you need them. And neediness is rarely attractive. Now, that doesn't mean you should become cold. It doesn't mean you should play games. And it certainly doesn't mean you should pretend not to care. The real secret is much more uncomfortable. You have to become a man who can genuinely walk away. Because when your happiness, your confidence, and your sense of identity don't depend on whether one particular woman chooses you, something changes in the way you carry yourself. You stop chasing. You stop trying to prove your worth. You stop looking for constant reassurance, and she can feel that. People are extraordinarily sensitive to emotional dependence. You can say all the right words. You can dress well. You can have money. You can be funny. You can send the perfect text. But if underneath all of that is the desperate thought, please like me, people eventually feel it. And this is where a lot of men misunderstand attraction. They think attraction is created by doing more. Sometimes attraction is created by removing the pressure. Think about it. If someone is constantly standing in front of you saying, "Do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me?" Eventually, you don't even think about whether you like them. You start thinking about why they're so desperate for you to like them. But if somebody has a full life, a sense of direction, and genuine confidence, their attention feels different. It feels valuable because it isn't being given away out of desperation. And that's the first principle. Unless your attention becomes more powerful when it comes from choice rather than need, a confident man doesn't withhold attention because he's trying to manipulate a woman. He gives attention because he genuinely wants to. And when he doesn't want to, he doesn't force himself to perform. That's a completely different psychological position. And this is where I think a lot of men make their first mistake. They confuse kindness with surrender. They think being a good man means always being available, always agreeing, always responding immediately, always saying yes, always reassuring, always making her the center of their world. But imagine you meet someone who agrees with everything you say. You say, "Let's go here." Sure. You say, "Let's do this." Sure. You disappear for 3 days. They wait. You come back. They're still there. You cancel plans. They rearrange their entire life. Eventually, what does your behavior communicate? That this person has no center of gravity outside of you. And when someone senses that, the mystery disappears. There's nothing left to discover. Human beings are attracted to what they haven't completely figured out. Not because people want to be psychologically tortured, but because curiosity is one of the strongest forces in human nature. When something is completely predictable, your mind stops investigating it. When something has depth, complexity, and a little uncertainty, your attention naturally returns to it. This is why mystery has always been such a powerful part of seduction. But mystery doesn't mean hiding who you are. It means you don't reveal your entire psychological world in the first few conversations. You don't unload your entire history. You don't explain every insecurity. You don't tell someone exactly how obsessed you are with them before they've even had a chance to know you. You allow the relationship to unfold. You let curiosity do some of the work. And that brings us to something extremely important. You cannot make someone chase you by chasing them harder. You create the possibility of pursuit by becoming someone worth pursuing. That's a completely different strategy. Look at ambition. A man who is deeply engaged in his work, his craft, his physical health, his friendships, his goals, his interests. He has somewhere to direct his attention. His life isn't waiting for a woman to give it meaning. And paradoxically, that makes his attention more meaningful when he does give it, because she knows he has other places he could put that attention. This doesn't mean pretending to be busy. That's another mistake. Men read advice like this and suddenly start waiting 6 hours before responding to a text because they think Robert Greene said absence creates desire. No, that's not psychological sophistication. That's insecurity wearing a costume. If you see a message and you're free, respond. If you want to call her, call her. If you want to see her, ask her. The difference is that you don't abandon your entire life to maintain access to her. You're not calculating every minute. You're not keeping a stopwatch next to your phone. You're simply living from your own center, and that is far more powerful. Because the woman isn't feeling that you're trying to control her, she's feeling that you're not controlled by her. There's a huge difference. And psychologically, that's where respect begins. A man who desperately needs approval is easy to control. A man who can tolerate rejection is much harder to manipulate. And I'm not talking about becoming emotionally numb, quite the opposite. You should be capable of feeling attraction intensely. You should be capable of caring deeply. You should be capable of telling a woman that she's beautiful. You should be capable of showing affection. But you also need the internal strength to hear, I'm not interested, without collapsing. That is freedom. And freedom is attractive. Now let's talk about one of the most misunderstood ideas in seduction: absence. Absence can create desire, but only when there was something meaningful to miss. If you haven't created a connection, disappearing doesn't make someone chase you. It just makes them forget you. That's why the sequence matters. First, create genuine emotional connection, then allow space, give attention, then return to your own life, be present, then don't become permanently available. You don't need to manufacture scarcity. Your life should naturally create it. Think about an artist. If an artist spends every second asking people, do you like my work? They become less interesting. But if the artist is completely absorbed in creating something meaningful, people become curious. What are they working on? What are they thinking about? Why are they so passionate about this? The same principle applies to your life. Your purpose creates gravity, and one of the reasons many men struggle with women is that they make the woman their purpose. They stop working. They stop exercising. They stop seeing friends. They stop pursuing ambitions. They stop developing themselves. Their entire emotional world becomes, did she text? Why hasn't she replied? Does she like me? Is she talking to another guy? Why did she say that? And now they're not even experiencing attraction anymore. They're experiencing anxiety, and anxiety makes you behave in ways that create the exact rejection you're afraid of. You text again, you over explain, you ask for reassurance, you become jealous, you become controlling, you start performing, and eventually she feels the pressure. This is why the real psychological trick isn't a trick at all. You have to stop needing the outcome. You can want her without needing her. That's the distinction. Wanting says, I would love for this to work. Needing says, I don't know who I am if this doesn't work. Those two energies feel completely different. And women aren't the only ones who respond to this. Imagine you're interviewing two people for a job. One candidate desperately needs the position. The other candidate wants the position but knows they can survive without it. Who has more leverage? Usually the second person, not because they're pretending, because they're psychologically free. The same principle appears everywhere in human behavior: negotiation, business, friendship, leadership, romance. The person who can walk away has options, and options create power. Now, there's another psychological principle that matters here. Self people value what they participate in creating.
Yeah.
If you do everything, the other person has nothing to invest. You plan everything. You initiate everything. You carry every conversation. You constantly entertain. You constantly reassure. You constantly push the relationship forward. And then you wonder why she isn't equally invested. But investment creates attachment. When someone contributes time, attention, emotion, effort, curiosity, and vulnerability, they're not simply giving something to you. They're also psychologically investing in the relationship. So don't make the mistake of trying to carry the entire connection yourself. Give her room to participate. Let her initiate sometimes. Let her suggest something. Let her tell you what she wants. Let her reveal herself. You don't have to force intimacy. You can create space for it. And this is where observation becomes more important than technique. Forget the idea that there is some magic sentence that will make every woman chase you. There isn't. People aren't algorithms. You can't memorize 10 psychological tricks and suddenly understand another human being. You have to pay attention. How does she behave around you? What makes her more animated? What makes her withdraw? What subjects make her open up? What does she value? What does she laugh at? What does she fear? What does she repeatedly talk about? What kind of attention does she respond to? You're not trying to manipulate those things. You're trying to understand the person in front of you, because the fastest way to become a bad seducer is to stop seeing the woman and start seeing your strategy. You stop listening. You're waiting for the right moment to use your technique. You're thinking, should I text now? Should I wait? Should I compliment her? Should I disappear? And while you're calculating all of that, you're missing the actual human being. Real charisma requires presence. You have to be there, actually there, listening, watching, feeling the emotional temperature of the interaction. And that's why confidence is so much more than acting confident. Acting confident is easy for 5 minutes. Real confidence comes from having evidence that you can handle life. You keep promises to yourself. You accomplish difficult things. You tolerate discomfort. You recover from failure. You don't collapse when someone rejects you. You can sit alone without desperately reaching for distraction. You have goals that matter to you. You can walk into a room without needing everybody to approve of you. That is the kind of confidence that eventually becomes visible without you announcing it. You don't have to say, I'm confident. People can feel it. And this brings us back to women chasing you. If you want someone to pursue you, don't spend your life studying how to make them pursue you. Study why you need them to. That's the deeper question. Why does her attention matter so much? Why does her rejection feel like a verdict on your worth? Why do you become a different person when an attractive woman walks into the room? Why do you suddenly become overly agreeable? Why do you feel the need to impress? Why are you afraid to disagree? Why do you keep checking your phone? Those questions will teach you more about attraction than another 100 pickup tricks, because underneath most needy behavior is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being alone, fear that another man is better, fear that you're not attractive enough, fear that you'll never find anyone else. And when fear takes over, you become obsessed with controlling the other person's response, but you cannot control another person's desire. You can only control the person you bring into the interaction. That's why the strongest frame isn't how do I make her chase me? It's, how do I become someone who doesn't need to chase anyone? That's a much more powerful question, because when you stop trying to extract validation from women, you become capable of actually connecting with them. You can flirt without desperation. You can compliment without seeking something in return. You can pursue without clinging. You can walk away without resentment. And you can care without losing yourself. That's what makes attraction sustainable. And there's one final principle that most men completely miss. Don't become obsessed with being mysterious. Become genuinely interesting. There's a difference. Mystery can get someone's attention. Character keeps it. You can create curiosity with uncertainty, but eventually the person is going to discover who you actually are. So, what happens when the mystery disappears? If there's nothing underneath it, attraction disappears too. That's why you need substance. Develop your mind, develop your body, develop your career, develop your social intelligence. Read, travel, create, build something, become excellent at something, have opinions, have standards, have boundaries, have a sense of humor, have a life that doesn't require an audience. Then you don't need to manufacture intrigue. Your life naturally contains it. And when a woman enters that life, she isn't becoming your entire world. She's becoming part of an already existing world. That's the psychological shift. The goal isn't to manipulate a woman into chasing you. The goal is to become so grounded in yourself that you no longer behave like someone who needs to be chased. You don't pursue every woman. You don't convince every woman. You don't beg every woman. You don't perform for every woman. You pay attention. You show genuine interest. You create connection. You give space. You watch what comes back. And if the interest is mutual, you move forward. If it isn't, you let go. No bitterness, no revenge, no games, just movement. Because ultimately, the most attractive position isn't being the man who can make women chase him. It's being the man who has enough self-respect to choose carefully who he wants to chase at all. And once you understand that, The entire psychology of attraction changes. You stop asking, how do I make her want me? And you start asking, do I actually want her? That question puts you back in control of your own life, and that is where real confidence begins. There's another mistake that men make when they hear all of this. They think the answer is to become unavailable. So suddenly they stop texting. They take hours to respond. They become cold. They pretend they're busy. They start acting like they don't care. And then they sit there staring at their phone, desperately hoping she notices. That's not confidence. That's dependence disguised as indifference. And women are often much better at detecting that contradiction than men realize. You can say, I'm not interested, but your behavior can be screaming, please be interested. That's why you can't fake emotional independence for very long. Eventually, your real psychology leaks through. And this is one of the most important principles of attraction. You cannot consistently fake the emotional state that you don't possess. If you're insecure, eventually insecurity appears. If you're desperate, eventually desperation appears. If you're genuinely confident, you don't need to perform confidence. It simply becomes part of your behavior. And that's why the work has to happen underneath the interaction. You don't need better tricks. You need a stronger psychological foundation. Because think about what happens when a man doesn't have that foundation. A woman doesn't reply. He starts creating stories. Maybe she's losing interest. Maybe she's talking to another guy. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I should send another message. And now something that could have been completely innocent has become an emotional crisis. He isn't responding to reality anymore. He's responding to the movie inside his head. And this is where self-control becomes incredibly seductive. Not because you're suppressing your emotions, but because you're capable of experiencing an emotion without immediately obeying it. You feel anxiety. You don't text. You feel jealousy. You don't accuse. You feel rejected. You don't beg. You feel attraction. You don't lose your entire identity. You simply notice the emotion and then you decide what to do. That is power, because the person who is controlled by every emotional impulse is extremely easy to manipulate. If someone knows exactly what will make you jealous, they'll control you through jealousy. If they know exactly what will make you chase, they'll control you through withdrawal. If they know exactly what will make you angry, they'll control you through provocation. But when you understand yourself, those buttons become less effective. And that brings us to something deeper. The ability to tolerate uncertainty is one of the foundations of confidence. Most men don't actually fear rejection as much as they fear uncertainty. They want to know, does she like me? Where is this going? What does she think? Why did she say that? Why hasn't she replied? They want certainty because certainty feels safe. But attraction doesn't operate according to certainty. You don't know exactly what another person feels. You can't, and trying to eliminate that uncertainty often destroys the very attraction you're trying to create. You interrogate, you over-communicate, you demand reassurance, you ask for definitions too early. You try to force the relationship into a predictable shape, and suddenly what could have developed naturally starts feeling like an obligation. Give things room to breathe. You don't need to know everything immediately. Let curiosity exist. Let anticipation exist. Let her wonder about you sometimes. But there's an important distinction. You aren't trying to make her anxious. You're allowing her to experience curiosity. Those are completely different things. Anxiety says, why is he ignoring me? Curiosity says, I wonder what he's doing. The first comes from manipulation. The second comes naturally when someone has a life beyond the interaction. That's why your absence should never feel like punishment. It should simply mean you're somewhere else living your life. And when you return normally. No games, no dramatic explanation. No, sorry, I was teaching you a lesson. You were just living. That's the difference between genuine independence and manipulation. Now let's talk about standards, because one of the fastest ways to become attractive is to stop treating attraction as a one-way evaluation. A lot of men walk into an interaction thinking, does she approve of me? But there's another question. Do I approve of her? What kind of person is she? Does she have integrity? Does she respect people? Does she have ambition? Does she bring peace into your life? Does she communicate honestly? Does she make you better? Do you actually enjoy being around her? Or are you simply attracted to the fact that she's attractive? Those are very different things. And when you start evaluating instead of begging for evaluation, your entire energy changes. You're no longer sitting across from someone hoping they'll give you a passing grade. You're two people discovering whether you actually fit. That's healthy attraction. And interestingly, standards create scarcity, not artificial scarcity, real scarcity. If you genuinely don't want everyone, then your attention has value. Think about it. If you give your attention to every woman who gives you 5 seconds of attention, your attention means very little. But if you are selective, if you have standards, if you know what you're looking for, then when you give someone your attention, it communicates something. There's something about you that I genuinely find interesting. That is far more powerful than I'll take anyone who wants me. And this is why desperation is so destructive. Desperation makes people indiscriminate. They don't want a particular person. They want validation from anyone. And when you're looking for validation rather than connection, you become easy to manipulate. Someone gives you a little attention and suddenly you become emotionally invested. Someone withdraws that attention and you chase it. Your mood becomes dependent on another person's behavior. You have handed them the remote control to your emotional state. Take it back. Your emotional state is your responsibility. Now, there's another principle that plays a huge role in attraction. People become more invested in what they have contributed to. This is why you shouldn't do everything. Don't carry every conversation. Don't plan every date. Don't constantly initiate. Don't solve every problem. Don't make every emotional move. Give the other person room to contribute. If she initiates, respond. If she suggests something, engage. If she asks about your life, reveal something meaningful. If she invests emotionally, meet her there. But don't create a relationship entirely by yourself, because then you're not building mutual attraction. You're building a fantasy, and a fantasy can only exist as long as you keep supplying it. The moment you stop, there's nothing there. That's why reciprocity matters. You move toward her, she moves toward you. You open up, she opens up. You invest, she invests. You create connection, she contributes to it. That's how something real develops. And here's something else most men don't understand. You shouldn't try to impress a woman constantly. You should let her experience you. There's a subtle difference. When you're trying to impress, you're performing. You're showing your achievements. You're telling stories designed to make yourself look impressive. You're dropping hints about money. You're exaggerating your confidence. You're trying to win approval. When you're simply allowing someone to experience you, there's less performance. You're comfortable. You're curious. You're playful. You're not afraid to reveal imperfections. You're not trying to control every impression. And strangely enough, imperfections can create more attraction than perfection, because perfection feels manufactured. Human beings are complicated. You have strengths. You have weaknesses, you have contradictions, you have strange interests, you have stories you aren't proud of, you have things you're still working on. That complexity makes you human, and human beings are attracted to what feels real. This is why authenticity isn't some soft, feel-good concept. It's strategic. If you are constantly pretending to be someone else, you have to maintain the performance, and eventually you become exhausted. Worse, the person isn't even attracted to you. They're attracted to the character you're playing. So eventually the relationship collapses. You don't want someone to fall for your performance. You want them to discover the real person underneath it. And that requires courage, because authenticity creates the possibility of rejection. If you're honest about who you are, someone might not like it. But that's actually useful, because the people who don't like the real you are saving you time. You don't need universal approval. You need compatibility. And that brings us to rejection. Most men think rejection means I'm not attractive enough. I'm not interesting enough. I'm not successful enough. But rejection doesn't necessarily mean any of those things. Sometimes two people simply don't fit. Sometimes attraction isn't mutual. Sometimes timing is wrong. Sometimes someone wants something completely different. And sometimes, yes, you simply aren't what that person wants. That's okay. The dangerous part is what you make rejection mean about yourself. If rejection becomes an identity statement, you become afraid of taking risks. You stop approaching, you stop flirting, you stop being vulnerable, you start protecting yourself, and then you complain that nothing happens. But the man who can tolerate rejection has an enormous advantage. He can act, he can take chances, he can be direct, he can express interest, he can make mistakes, he can recover. And because he isn't terrified of the outcome, he often becomes more attractive. Not because rejection makes you attractive, because courage does, and courage requires the possibility of losing. You can't be brave if nothing is at stake. Now, here's where all of this comes together. If you want women to pursue you, stop obsessing over pursuit. Build a life that creates something worth moving toward. Have direction, have standards, have boundaries, have ambition, have social intelligence. Develop your body, develop your emotional control, learn to communicate, learn to listen, learn to flirt, learn to walk away, and most importantly, learn to be alone. Because a man who is terrified of being alone will accept almost anything to avoid loneliness, and that destroys his standards. But a man who is comfortable alone can choose. He can say, I like you, but I don't need to possess you. I want you, but I won't abandon myself for you. I would love for this to work, but if it doesn't, my life continues. That is an incredibly powerful position. And it isn't about dominance, it's about self possession. There's a reason people are drawn to someone who seems internally settled because their presence feels safe. You don't have to manage them. You don't have to constantly reassure them. You don't have to walk on eggshells. They can experience emotion without making you responsible for every emotion they experience. And that's rare. The world is full of people looking for someone to complete them. Very few people spend enough time becoming complete within themselves. And that's why the strongest form of attraction isn't, please choose me. It's, I've chosen who I want to become. Once that becomes your center, women stop being the scoreboard. They're no longer proof of your masculinity. They're no longer proof that you're valuable. They're no longer the solution to your loneliness. They're simply human beings. Some you'll connect with, some you won't. Some will be fascinated by you. Some won't notice you. Some will want you, some won't. And your job isn't to control every outcome. Your job is to become the kind of man who can handle all of them. Because here's the paradox. The moment you no longer need women to chase you, you become much easier to pursue. The moment you stop trying to prove you're desirable, you become more desirable. The moment you stop begging for attention, your attention becomes more valuable. The moment you stop fearing rejection, you become more willing to take risks. And the moment you stop asking, how can I make her want me? You can finally ask the question that matters. Is this a woman I genuinely want in my life? That question changes everything. Because attraction isn't about controlling another human being. It's about creating enough value, confidence, mystery, emotional depth, and freedom that another person naturally wants to move closer. You can't force that. You can only create the conditions for it. And then you let them choose. That's the final psychological trick. You don't make women chase you. You become a man worth moving toward. And then you have the discipline to let the choice be theirs.